I'm Erin Kate Kalikia. I am the Deputy Director at the Division of Long-Term Care with the New York State Department of Health. This is Lana Earl, who is the Director of the Division with the Department of Health. Thank you all for coming here today. Just before I turn this over to Lana and to Arlen Sturgis, who we have brought in here today to help facilitate this meeting. There's a couple of quick housekeeping items that I just wanted to review with everyone. First and foremost is always the restroom location. So here on the 4th floor in this building, we have a men's room right here to the hard left and a ladies' room around the corner and to the left. Fully accessible bathrooms, however, for men's and women's are on the 3rd floor. So if you take the elevators that you came up on right here to the 3rd floor, both the men's and women's accessible bathrooms are around the corner to the left.
Point of order, the bathrooms are not accessible on the 3rd floor. They are not accessible on the 3rd floor. So, yeah, that's kind of an important procedural failure in the process. Who is responsible for ensuring that those bathrooms were accessible?
So, thank you for that comment. When we checked the facility for today, we were told that they were accessible. So, breakdown of communication there between us and the facility. We'll make sure that we accommodate. We'll change our venue for the follow-up session to ensure.
My PA had to literally manually lift the back of my wheelchair over to make the right hand turn. There's guidelines that have been around for 20-something years as to what accessibility is, and I don't think an accessible bathroom is too much now.
I completely agree. Our apologies. Again, we were under the understanding from the building folks who helped us arrange today's session that the bathrooms were accessible. Our apologies.
Second housekeeping item is to please silence your cell phones. We are recording today's session as we have recorded all the other sessions. The session will be available on our website, and the website address is in this slide deck, which is also available on our website. So if you don't mind silencing your cell phones. Also, outside in the hallway is a listserv. It is optional. You're not required to sign up for it, but it is the email distribution list that we will be using to push out information on EVV as it moves forward. So if you would like to sign up for that listserv and receive EVV information from the Department of Health, that is an option that's out there. And finally, as I mentioned, this presentation will be available on our website following this session. Thank you. So I will turn it over now to Arlen Sturgis and Lana Earl. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. As Erin Kate mentioned, my name is Lana Earl. I am the Director of the Division of Long-Term Care at the New York State Department of Health. I really want to thank you all for coming here today to talk about, obviously, a very important topic to us all, which is electronic visit.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Before you start, can you ask someone who works here maybe if there's a real accessible bathroom somewhere?
Yes, we have somebody looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. To talk about electronic visit verification requirements that CMS, the federal government, has required states to comply with. The goal of today's session is to hear from you, your stakeholder comments, concerns, issues around EVV, and we have a good space of time to do that. We have engaged Arlen Sturgis, he's up here today, as a person to help facilitate the conversation today and discussion so that we can hear from you. Arlen is going to go through a few slides, background slides around EVV. It shouldn't take very much time. Folks in previous sessions have requested that we kind of provide some background and lay out the landscape a little bit. So Arlen is going to spend a few minutes doing that, and then we're going to get to the important part which is turning over the discussion for conversations with you folks, which Arlen will facilitate. We do have Stephanie. She'll be walking around with a microphone so that we can make sure that you can be heard throughout the room. And so she'll come by when you're ready to talk. Please feel free to let us know, raise your hand. And again, I'll turn it over to Arlen for our engagement. And please feel free to ask questions along the way, however you'd like today's forum to work. It's really time for you.
Very good. Can the folks in the back hear me okay? Okay, that's really important, and part of the reason why we are miking the session is so that everyone gets to hear any questions or feedback that we get from all of you. So that's really important. As Lana said, and as Aaron Kate said, I have a very short presentation. I'm being very careful about it. I'm actually going to read the slides to make sure that everyone hears what we have to say in terms of introducing today's session. This is a listening session. In my role, I am a consultant. I've been in the Medicaid business for a long time, but I'm not an EVV subject matter expert. We have folks from OPWDD and we have folks from DOH here to answer and address questions and concerns. I will do my best to make sure that everyone is heard. So, and Stephanie is much faster than me. So when we need the mic to get to one of you, she's going to bring it to you. I'll actually stop you if you begin to talk before we get the mic to you, because we are recording, and it's going to be really important that everyone hears all of the input that we received today. So I'll go through, it's 17 slides, and I'm not even going to go through them all before we start. There's a couple of slides that I'm going to use as my closing slides. So we're going to get through them very quickly, and you'll see a slide come up once I ask Sarah to get to it that's actually blank. And that's my indication to make sure that we start hearing more and more feedback from all of you. So Sarah and I are going to work together. We put this slide up here. This is where I'm going to start now that we've finished the housekeeping. Statewide EVV's listening sessions. The goal of the statewide series of electronic visit verification listening sessions is to collaborate and receive feedback from stakeholders, consumers, providers of services, managed care plans, local departments of social services on the implementation of the electronic visit verification requirement. This is language right out of the statute, right out of the law that was passed that's centered around EVV. Next slide, please, Sarah. Review of key questions and topics to help inform and facilitate today's listening sessions. What is the 21st Century Cures Act? What are the requirements for electronic visit verification? What Medicaid services or programs are impacted by EVV requirements? Guiding principles for EVV implementation. How can the implementation of EVV improve services delivered to consumers? What are some examples of options for how EVV can be implemented? Where is EVV in place today? What are the possible approaches for implementing EVV? And as I mentioned, there'll be a slide where we start our open discussion. Next slide, please, Sarah. What is the 21st Century Cures Act? This is a law that was signed into federal law in December of 2016. It is the federal statute. It requires all states to use electronic visit verification for Medicaid personal care services, PCS, by January 1, 2020. And for home health care services, HHCS, by January 1, 2023. There is a application that DOH is considering right now. They can apply for a good faith extension. That application process doesn't start until July and has to be complete by November. Next slide, Sarah, please. What are the requirements for electronic visit verification? The Cures Act requires that EVV use a selected solution to electronically collect service delivery information to verify the following: service type, individual receiving the service, date of service, location of service delivery, individual providing the service, begin and end times for the service. New York State has not selected any EVV solution or model. This is the beginning of that process, these listening sessions. Next slide, please, Sarah. What Medicaid services or programs are impacted by EVV requirements? Personal Care Service Program, PCSP, Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program, CDPAP, Confirmed Home Health Aid, Certified Home Health Aid, CHHA, Community Habilitation Program and Skills Acquisition, Maintenance, and Enhancement. Next slide, please, Sarah. Guiding principles for EVV implementation. Collaborate with stakeholders to identify and implement an EVV model. Meet federal requirements, thus avoiding penalties and ensuring federal Medicaid funding is preserved for services. Meet Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act or HIPAA compliant standards and establish safeguards to protect patient privacy. Be deployed through a collaborative stakeholder engagement process. That's where we are today. Provide training for providers and consumers for the implementation and use of the EVV solutions, potential solutions, as necessary. Other will be feedback we receive here today and in other sessions that we've already held, and some in the future, which I'll also mention. Next slide, Sarah. Thank you. How can the implementation of EVV improve the services delivered to consumers? Ensure that Medicaid consumers are receiving the care and services included in their person-centered care plan. Reduce administrative burden of paper service verification documents. Increase payment accuracy and reduce billing errors. Ensure program integrity. And there'll be other ideas as well. Next slide, please, Sarah. What are some of the examples of options for how EVV can be implemented? We have 3 of them listed up here. Telephone calls can be used to capture service period and verify location. Mobile application, this is another option that's being considered. Apps or applications can be downloaded and used to capture service period and verify location. Fixed object fob, this technology is a little bit different. This is a technology that is in place today. It's out there in the world. It essentially provides you with access to a system. So it's a little different than the telephone and the mobile app. But the fixed object fob is also an option, a technology option. Next slide, please. Where is EVV in place today? The Office of Medicaid Inspector General requires home health agencies and personal care providers that exceed $15 million annually in Medicaid fee-for-service and/or managed care reimbursements to contract with a verification organization, a VO. We have a question. Can we wait? I've got 2 slides left. Let me get all the way to the end. Is that okay? All right, I will come to you first, though. I appreciate your arm. I do. Let me get through this because we're almost there. Verification organizations are required to perform pre-claim reviews of claims data collected in EVV systems. Home care vendor agencies contracted with New York City Human Resource Administration, or HRA, providing home attendant services, housekeeping services, and CDPAP services. DOH has issued an EVV survey to providers, personal care and home care services to assess their use and readiness for EVV implementation. The EVV survey is available on the DOH EVV website, which we'll talk more about as we go through the presentation. I'm actually going to read this off. It's a URL, so it's going to take me a second. https://health.ny.gov//medicaid/redesign/EVVindex.htm. The summary of the survey results is out there and available on the DOH EVV website. Next slide, please, Sarah. There are 5 options on this slide that we're considering as part of the EVV solution. So what are possible approaches for implementing EVV? Provider choice, providers select EVV vendor of choice. State selected vendor, state contracts with a single vendor that all providers are required to use. State selected in-house system, state creates, runs, and manages its own EVV system. Fourth one, managed care plan, MCP choice. MCPs select their EVV vendor of choice. And the last one is the open vendor hybrid, or open vendor / hybrid. State contracts with a single vendor or builds a system, but also allows providers to use their own vendors. Next slide, please, Sarah. There it is. So I'd like to start with feedback if we can. I want to remind you guys that I have Stephanie. Stephanie, can you just raise your hand? I really want to be careful as a facilitator to make sure that when you provide us feedback or you ask a question, that we are getting that onto the recording. We have all of that working right now. I know it's happening because Mike has told me that it's all set and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start with, I think it's Peter, am I right? So we'll start with Peter.
If you could go back to the slide where you showed devices that
The options. There it is.
Yeah, where's the option of computer filed timesheets? Because as we know in California, they adopted that version of EVV, and it's not on the slide.
So this wasn't meant to, sorry about that. This wasn't meant to be all-inclusive of all of the potential options. So that certainly is one. And Peter was talking with us prior to the beginning of the session, and Peter actually gave us our first stakeholder comment and asked that we consider the use of the California model for EVV. So we wrote that on the slide. I don't know, Peter, if you want to add more to that or if you have more questions on the slide.
Yeah, I just have one more question. Who's
Sure.
manufacturing those three options? Who's making them? What company? Are they made by different companies?
So they could be made by all different kinds of companies. There is no preconceived notion or idea about which company. I think all of those things will come out of the stakeholder collaboration we have here today around what our next steps are for selecting an EVV approach that meets the requirements.
And since we have the CEO of Sun Data here, could we ask him what devices he's planning to implement in New York State?
Well, he doesn't get to make that decision. We're here today to collect information about what options there are and what folks' preferences are for implementation, and it's not up to any particular vendor, right? It'll be a collaborative process. We'll collect your feedback. We'll collect your feedback today. We have a few more sessions coming up as well. Complete our listening tour sessions and then present that feedback back to folks and then go on with our next step about summarizing that information. We also have a survey out there as well for providers. So we're in the process of collecting that information. But the goal, right, is to get to a decision around an EVV solution that is collaborative in nature, takes all the feedback, and tries to implement a solution that addresses as many issues and concerns from stakeholders.
Thank you.
Sure.
What is your understanding of
Can I hold on just 1 second? I really want to mic your question, please.
what is your understanding of the requirement for verification of location?
So we, in terms of the requirement that EVV applies to services that begin and end in the home, or how you verify the location itself?
Well, where's the requirement that services are conducted in the home? Well, is that what your understanding is?
That is our understanding.
So your understanding is that services are to be conducted in the home? exclusively.
Right, no, so we have been engaged with CMS in getting some more clarification from them, and they indicated to us last week that they are going to be coming out with more detailed guidance around that particular question. What is out there so far discusses that EVV requirements apply to services that either begin or end in the home.
And where do you read that in the statute?
So the statute, I don't believe that requirement is in the statute. I believe it's in the guidance that CMS has produced.
So in other words, it's not codified anywhere.
Nope, but
And then what's your understanding of how Olmsted impacts on that?
so I'll answer the first question first. So the codification issue and the guidance that CMS is producing to rely upon the statute, I really can't speak to. It's a CMS document. I didn't write it. But we have asked CMS for more clarification around those rules.
Decision makers, what is your interpretation of it then?
So I will
And
look,
what's the interpretation of the underlying statute?
Right.
And do you see a conflict there?
all very good questions. Like I said, we reached out to CMS last week because we share some of your interest in getting more clarification from them. This is a CMS rule that we are implementing, so we're looking to them for their clarification and their guidance. And we'll certainly share with you all the additional information that we get. Agree that those are very good questions. There's similar and almost exact same questions that we asked CMS as well.
Well, it would be good to know that those questions are being asked to CMS.
Agreed.
Because that's news to most people here.
Right.
And especially, is New York of the mind that if CMS promulgates a regulation that in some way violates Olmsted, would New York be okay with that? Or would they challenge that on behalf of their constituents?
Yeah, it's difficult to presuppose what CMS may or may not do and what our reaction to that would be, but we certainly would not feel comfortable supporting anything that is in violation of Olmsted, although it's not likely CMS would put that forward, but I can't predict that.
Well, if some of the information being bantered about includes provision of services in the home, that screams a violation of Olmsted.
Again, I'm not comfortable presupposing what CMS will do and how they may or may not clarify in the home. I think your comment today is that we should all be mindful of any guidance that comes out with respect to whether or not, whatever potential impact it may have on requirements around Olmsted. And we can certainly make sure that we
And
put that.
also whether or not it's in conflict with the organic statute, which is completely devoid of any requirement of doing anything in the home.
So again, we'll certainly can write down those comments regarding the interpretation of this statute into guidance and how CMS is putting out guidance for states to implement EVV to ensure that it is not in conflict with Olmsted and the issues that you've raised.
And I appreciate, Lana, what you're saying. I appreciate it. I really want to make sure that we hear all of these things, and we're starting to get some good feedback, but I also want to, there's a couple folks that I can see are also looking to provide some comments. If there are folks that want to comment on these comments, I'm open to that, so.
Yes, I can't bring up my hand. How do I get?
Of course.
Yeah, so do you have any idea about how specific a location needs to be designated in terms of the location of the service? So for instance, if you say, because it could be that you just need to check a box that you captured the location. So you could have a box that says Planet Earth, which it is a location. It's kind of a broad location, but that might satisfy the location requirement, right? But I'd like to shift back to the slide. I believe there was a slide that mentioned a verification organization. Okay, so that's, my understanding is that a verification organization is separate from an EVV vendor, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
And is it not true that SAM Data also happens to be a verification organization?
I do not have that knowledge about SAM Data.
Yes. We have a CEO.
So it strikes me that you have the fox minding the chicken coop and making money on both ends of the stick. So just as a sort of a procedural lay of the land observation, it seems that a vendor needs to pick what hat they want to wear at any one time. If they want to be a VO, they can be a VO. If they want to be a provider of EVV services, then they need to pick that.
So the recommendation is that we have vendors identifying what type of systems they'll be involved with.
Conflicts? Conflicts that they might have.
Yep, conflicts.
As
Okay.
well as I would be interested in knowing of campaign contributions.
Okay.
Because I think knowing where money gets spent, I mean, let's just be honest. You know, people have lobbyists, and you can track these things and look them up. I'd like to know, in the interest of transparency. Transparency, I think, is important because it speaks to the integrity of the decision-making process. So whatever the vendors are, either on the VO side or on the EVV side, I'd like to know how they participated in the ultimate policy-making process.
So can I translate a little bit so we can make sure we get it on the board and you can tell me if it's consistent? So you would like to ensure that there's transparency in the vendor selection process
Yes.
around whatever solution we collectively identify to implement EVV. Fair?
Yeah, that's good for that
Thank you.
point. And so then, as a follow-up, there was another slide that looked at the different models, and we've already discussed that it's not exclusive. That's the first slide that Peter was mentioning. Right? I've had some dealings with SAM Data and other EVV providers, and I've raised concerns about the accessibility as to how the systems work, all right? The silence was deafening when I specifically asked whether these different systems, whether the mobile app or the telephonic system, whether they are going to be fully ADA compliant. And I asked them to show me the accessibility features. No answer at all. Now, in this day and age of 20-something years after the ADA, 29 years after the ADA, you shouldn't even need to ask either about bathrooms or about website accessibility. Yet, I mean, there's a thing called in an iPhone switch control. It's a feature that has to be turned on. Any halfway decent programmer knows how to make a website or an app accessible. Yet when I asked SAM Data that question about accessibility, nothing, absolutely nothing came from them. So please, right into the commentary, any system has to be fully accessible to different disabilities, and it has to be rigorously tested beforehand.
Understood. That's excellent.
Yes, thank you. And again, good comments. I am seeing some folks nodding their heads in agreement. And I'm also seeing some folks that may want to also add some additional comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak, either to follow up here? Please, right in the center, Stephanie.
My name is Mary Somoza, and I have been in contact with the Department of Health since the Cures Act came on the books, very secretly with people from tech companies coercing a Kentucky senator to sneak this into the 21 Cures Act. And I think nobody, certainly the legislators, didn't have time to read this legislation that was snuck in. And what happens now is it is part of the law, and we, the public, are obliged to comply with the law, whatever it is. One of my questions is, why has New York State not engaged in composing a task force of individuals around the state and in the community to address these concerns, not just a listening forum? Number two, the NYSL, I'm a member of the NYSL National Task Force. California already does not require GPS, biometrics, any sort of tracking. In New York, we're supposed to be the leaders in this field in the country. How come so late in the process? When this goes into law in 6 months, you are now engaging with the public, despite, and Lana, you know, multiple emails on my part and to you and Donna Frescatori regarding this, to bring us on board. Unfortunately, the Department of Health is doing unto us, people with disabilities, with managed care, with EVV, with CDPAP, and overwhelming people with disabilities across the state. I could not get my daughters here today. I have 2 quadriplegic daughters, which is known to many of the people here. And I applaud all these people who came out in this pouring rain, because it is such an important issue for us. It is one more imposition on our liberty, on our freedom, on our right to control our own lives. And that means I'm talking individuals with disabilities and parents, who we are the backup caretakers of our children, and we were not brought into this process. And New York State is very behind the mark, and I would urge the state immediately to select a task force to work on this and work with individuals in the community to see what we're working on. A national legislation now to get bio-tracking and GPS prohibited across the country. The DeGette bill, it will be called. But our goal as advocates is to get rid of EVV unless it is voluntary. There are individuals, vulnerable individuals who live alone, and perhaps their family members would like some sort of control. That's fine. But for individuals with disabilities who are out in the community, we're not crooks, we're not cheats, although many of the people we elect into office are, and serving prison terms, and so we should not be treated like Paul Manaforts of the world, wearing the equivalent of a bracelet to track every minute of our daily existence. And so we will work, I will certainly work, to make sure that EVV becomes voluntary and not mandatory for individuals living in the community. Years and years of fighting to have some sort of independence, and the parents and families of children who give up their lives, dedicate their lives to getting their children to be out and independent and free and less of a burden to the state. We do that, and then we're stuck with this. I let other people have a chance.
And you're doing great, and this is exactly what we were hoping for. This kind of input today is exactly why we're here. This listening session is not only to listen, but we're also taking some pretty rigorous notes. You can see Eddie up front here taking notes, but that's not the only place where we're actually writing down the feedback. We have a couple of folks that are helping us with that as well. And as Lana mentioned, we'll have a lot of this information available once the sessions are complete. This is exactly what we were hoping for. So thank you for very valid comments. I can see a few folks, I wanted to go ahead. Okay, I see a couple here, Stephanie, all the way up, right here. Oh, right, stop right here. Here you go.
Hi, my name is Christian Valley. I just wanted to give a little background on what she was saying. I'm a person with a disability. I broke my neck when I was 16 years old, so I was walking before then. I know both worlds. You know, I have, the person that works for me is my nephew as well, and without him, I can't do anything. He's my hands, but he's not my mind. I was wondering why no one in your end has a disability. You guys know anything about how we function?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
How we function. So how people with disabilities go through their daily lives.
So we have folks who work with us who have disabilities.
And you know their lives, you know the way that they work, you know that the fact that without the people that are there for them, they can't do anything.
And we have clinical folks as well, but I think sessions
Well,
like...
I don't really care about clinical folks. They don't understand anything about what my real life is about.
Yep. But I think the sessions today are important forums where you can share that information with us.
Well, what I want to share is
Happy to
I
hear.
work every single day.
Yep.
I pay taxes just like you do.
Yep.
I don't understand how it's okay for anyone to invade my privacy. I really need everyone here to literally understand what we go through. This is not the first thing that we have to deal with. There's a bunch of things that are changing around, and I don't see New York State doing anything.
Thank you. I do have a couple of other folks that have had their hand up for a little bit. Stephanie, right here in the center, the striped shirt. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jolene Vidiello, and I'm one of the founders of Concepts of Independence from 1974. We fought to have independent, self-directing, and be able to live our own lives. Now I feel like the whole program that we fought for on a piece of paper in 1974, and we started in 1980, we opened, and the program has been very successful. A lot of changes through the years, and we dealt with it. But we shouldn't have to deal with doing something like this. I've been living in my community for 46 years on my own with home attendance help, and I never had to call in for nothing. Self-directing is just what it is, self-directing and independent. And that's the way it should be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Other folks with comments?
Yes, right here.
All the way up front, please.
Stephanie.
Part of what I think Christian and Joanne and many other people in the room are concerned about is how these rules potentially will be interpreted and ultimately decide whether personal care assistants continue to stay in this progression of my workers alone. I mean, apart from my objection to many of the aspects of EVV, the privacy of workers is another consideration that DOH needs to take into consideration. So, for instance, there are people that are domestic violence survivors that may not want to have their location shoved anywhere because they had an abusive spouse. And so at that point, you know, are these people going to continue this line of work that DOH purports to be concerned about the ultimate continuity of care? That's the thing that's important. And I don't have any domestic violence survivors on my staff, but I have people that are concerned about what government says, you know, is looking over their shoulder. They have basically told me if this EVV thing goes into effect, especially under worst case scenarios, they are not going to work for me anymore. So I would say thank you 21st Century Cures Act, and thank you DOH, and thank you Sandata, because I mean, people keep talking about Sandata. Partly it's because they were the contract recipient in Ohio, where there has been lots of horrific experiences where leftover military surplus hardware was used for the EVV systems. Things like where cameras couldn't be turned off and they were taking pictures of people in their home. Now this is a worst case scenario, but if it happened one place, it could happen another place. So this is not about hysterical disabled people just, making stuff up. This is a concern about real world occurrences of serious policy, serious privacy violations occurring. So I would like to know whether the CEOs of EVV companies and high-ranking government officials would live with this same type of interference in their privacy.
Thank you.
Very good. Other comments? All the way to the wall, Stephanie, please. Oh, do we have another one? I'm sorry, Lana, I didn't mean to interrupt. Oh, okay, very good. I've seen a couple folks give me the nod, so go ahead, please.
I just wanted to piggyback on what TK said with what's happening on the ground in Ohio and other states. I'm with Stop EVV. My name is Kendra Scalia. I'm also a consumer here in New York State through the CDPAP services. And in Ohio, we have 2 confirmed deaths related to EVV, where individuals, independent providers, have chosen to leave employment and left their consumers without care. And due to the workforce shortage, which is nationwide and will be hardest hit here in New York State in 2025 with 85,000 job openings and no one available to fill them should the trend continue, and we're seeing that trend get worse. Individuals can't fill these positions, and so they're left without care for weeks at a time, to the point that they are dying because people don't want to use EVV, or they don't want to use a form of EVV that is so intrusive that it violates their constitutional right to privacy, as well as many other concerns with the rights that this community has fought for more than 40 years. We're also seeing handfuls of individuals in Ohio being placed into nursing homes and other institutional care settings due to EVV implementation. And so that is something here in New York we need to be very aware of and not make the same mistakes. And once again, I want to echo that that California model is the current model, without GPS tracking, without biometric tracking, where the location is broadly determined by a checkbox of home or community, as well as it is not a real-time EVV system, which is something that has been misconstrued for the last 2 years plus through EVV conversations in this country. EVV is not a required real-time system. It is simply an electronic system. And so California has gone ahead with a system that you can fill out at the end of the week or the end of the pay period in any of the methods that they choose, and they're all integrated. So if your PA wants to clock in 2 days on a phone and you want to clock in the rest on a website, everything's integrated and together. So we really need to be looking back at what works and what's already out there, and avoid these pitfalls that ultimately are going to destroy lives and kill people here in New York.
Thank you, Kendra. We do have a couple comments all the way to the front here. Stephanie, right here. Oh, one more over. All yours.
Hi, my name is Jacob Sadafava, and I had CDPAP for Johnny American, and I feel like EVV will take my personal privacy away, and I like we are pedophiles we are the same as you. And even though our body works differently, we shall not utilize excuse to put a camera on us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good, valid comment. Now I'm going to send you all the way to the wall, because he's had his hand up for a while, and then I'll come back to the center.
How are you? Morning, afternoon, everybody. My name is Angel Valley. I haven't heard from a personal aid yet, so I'm PCA for Christian Valley. Before it became like a thing to work as a family member and get paid, I was working since I was 18 years old with him. So I've been doing it for like 15 years now. And it provides a liberty to be able to go out and like be a person in the community. Like Tucker said, and like TK said, if this wasn't working, they wouldn't be here right now. They wouldn't be able to do the things they're doing. He works for the mayor's office. I'm with him on a daily basis. He has 3 people that come in for him, one as a backup, one night, one day. It works. It's just this line of the EDV, the intrusive part is what doesn't work. The electronic part is beautiful because there's been times when billing messed up and I didn't get paid, so it's a real thing. But to put more burden on it and what's already happening where they cut like $80 million from state funding coming down, that's just another level of you putting these people in a prison, which is their home, not a nursing home, a real home, where they can walk out and then they wouldn't get service. So it doesn't make any sense. That's just my part. I mean, for him, it's a lot more crucial than me, because what would happen is I would just get another job, right? But then he's also my family, so where does that put me? That puts me in a struggle, just like holding this mic and shaking. And you might understand that, but if you have a family member like an elderly mother or elderly father or a son or a daughter like they have, that's real life. That's not like to be played with. And that's maybe hard for the state to understand because it does come down to billing and digits. But in this whole process that I've looked at, I have yet to see a fraud case they mentioned that this is necessary for. That's what I'm missing in this whole thing. The data, the analytics that they're actually saying that there's people who are breaking the system down. And I'm not gonna lie, it probably does happen. But CDPAP and home care, I always thought it was a little different. One place trains you to come in and do a service that you might not do anything for that person, just walk away with a paycheck. The difference is with CDPAP is, if I don't do my job, he's gonna tell me, you gotta go home. Or he's gonna tell me, you're not doing what I asked you. There's no, everybody who has CDPAP or some type of form of that, they control it themselves. There's only a fiscal intermediary that gives the money out from the state. But they have no control over who you pick and what you do in your life. Once you leave your household, to be able to not have that ability to get somebody paid to help you live your life, what are you gonna do the next morning when you have to wake up and go to work? From 9 to 5. I work from 7 to 7. So like, it's real, like people need to come to the table, or you need to allow them to come to the table to help the process, because they won't work any other way. Thank you.
Very good, thank you very much. Stephanie, all the way to the front, please. Right here in the center. She's there for you.
Hi, I have a question. Have they discussed how they feel they would put this location system in place? Because it's very hard for me to find people to work for me in general because of the salaries and because of what they need to do for me. My aide has basically said if this system comes into play, she wants to leave because it's just one more thing to burden me with and to burden her with. So I'm going to be looking again. And I just wondered, has anybody thought about what is it exactly? What do they mean by tracking your location? Is it a GPS system? What does it mean in terms of what I have to do in added work? That's just one more added duty that I'm expected to do in order to keep my life independent and free. I just wondered, do they have any ideas Has anybody asked?
So your question is around what is the location?
What do they plan, what is their plan for testing where you are every minute of the day? That's a lot of work.
So I don't think it's the goal, based upon our conversation with CMS, to track where you are every minute of the day.
Right.
We will get more information on that. I think what I'm hearing you say is that the impact of in what you've all been saying, the impact on your personal privacy, the level of and what is the level of tracking? How will that impact your personal privacy? How will that impact the decision of your aide to continue to work and provide services? And what is the burden of you and your aide ensuring that we comply with EVV? A lot of those questions you're asking are hard because we have not picked a solution yet. What we're doing today is hearing all of your concerns around what should a solution attempt to avoid, right? And not create further exacerbate the feeling of personal privacy being invaded. I've heard that sounds like in the room for a few of you, there is a reasonable possibly approach around what Kendra, I think, has recommended and Peter has talked about today, the California solution, which I think does not have the GPS and the biometrics.
Right.
It still accommodates what we all believe, at least at this stage with the guidance that's available, what CMS means by meeting the location, one of the 6 requirements.
My mother has regular home care, and she literally tells me she has to run back home to make sure that the aide can be on the phone by the time she goes home. I don't want to have that worry on me.
Understood.
Very good. Again, we've got some comments over on this side. I've been looking and watching for you guys, but we'll go all the way into the, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Mandy Lyons, and I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I was with an agency, which meant 9 o'clock they clocked in, 3 o'clock they clocked out. And then I didn't like it. It was very intrusive. When you deal with transportation, you don't know what time you're getting home. And then the agency would call and want to know why we were not within the time frame. So when I found out about being self-direct, I was so happy because I control when I come in and when I leave, within my 8 hours or within my 4 hours. And if there's a flexibility, if we run late, it's between me and my aide. Can you come in tomorrow a little later because we ran late today? People said that it won't matter, but it does matter. I'm a person. I don't want everything that I have to be justified. I know it's money, but in being a person, a human person comes first over money. And that's what the state doesn't see. I've been a voter since I was 18 years old, so it's not like I'm just complaining because I'm disabled and I want things to be handed to me. I'm a person. I really am. I'm a parent, and I don't need, like the young lady said, an extra problem. What if you give a system and the aides can't do it because they also have learning problems that maybe not as visible as mine. And then we, the worker, the bosses have to train them how to do it. But what if your hands don't work? And what if the phones just don't work? Sometimes they just don't work. And I think this is very intrusive. I left the agency to be self-direct, to be independent. Now we're going backwards instead of forward. Thank you.
Much appreciated. I have a couple of other comments that have been waiting. If you can go all the way back to the gentleman in the yellow, please. And then we'll come back one more row to you as well, all right?
My name is William Rudolph, and I have a daughter who's been in self-direction since 2014. And when we entered self-direction, one of the things that struck me going through the front door was the idea that from OPWDD's idea that from 30,000 feet, basically you're designing the life you want to lead, as independent or not as you can be. And it strikes me that what I'm seeing with this EVV is that very open architecture of self-direction is turning into, shall I say, an Orwellian nightmare with this process. And I am quite frankly shocked that the OPWDD would sanction something like this, given how many people are in self-direction and how they push people or would like people to join self-direction. So I'm really surprised that New York State has headed down this path for EBD when they've got self-direction at the call.
So, just a quick comment. The EBD requirement is not being imposed by New York State. It is a federal requirement that is being imposed on us as part of our relationship with the federal government in sharing the costs of Medicaid.
Thank you, Lana. Okay, go ahead.
Just as a follow-up, given that New York State has the resources to look at the other templates, California's, that New York State would be moving along with this is very surprising.
So again, we haven't picked a solution, and part of being here in the room and conducting these listening sessions is to hear what solutions you all think could best address the issues. Again, I think I've heard 3 or 4 times in this room now that folks really gravitate towards the California solution. I think we've heard that in other sessions as well. So that's certainly very good stakeholder feedback that we can then assemble with the rest of the feedback, right? To then continue to work collaboratively to get to a solution that addresses the federal requirement for electronic visit verification. And that is our goal. And that is our primary reason for being here and conducting these listening sessions and working together with you all to understand the issues of concern and what we can do to collectively mitigate those and work on a solution that ensures to the maximum extent possible that we've protected your public health information, we've protected your personal privacy. We have not invaded your ability to be independent, to be a person, to go to work every day in the community, to live your lives as you have all envisioned living them under the consumer-directed program, preserving the nature, right, and all of the chief tenets of the consumer-directed program. So I get that it is very concerning. I personally share your concern. I'm here today with my colleagues throughout the state because we want to work with you collaboratively to hear your concerns and to try to preserve everything we can about the nature of the consumer-directed program and get to a solution that, again, mitigates all of the issues that you have all raised. They're very consistent throughout our listening sessions so far. Some are a little bit different. I've heard a lot about the California solution. It seems like a lot of folks in this room today would embrace the California solution. Kendra's put out some documentation on her website. There's a lot of good information out there. It's tried and true and tested in California. I'm not here to lobby for anything today. My point is to hear from you, but I just want to echo back to you all what it is that I think that we're all hearing and writing on the board and making sure that we got it right. So we can continue to take comments.
Thank you, Lana. We do have a couple of other comments that have been waiting for a little bit. Please.
I got to say one thing very quickly.
Hold on one second. It's really important that we do mic you. Sorry to interrupt you that way. We'll come right back to you.
If Homeland Security cannot secure our electric grid, they cannot secure our voting system. Facebook is selling our information like nobody's business. Amazon is collecting information with the echo we are being spied on every which way, and we have no control over it unless they adopt the European measures to regulate the system. So I see no way that New York State can protect our data when no one else in the country is capable of doing it. And we are constantly under cyber attack from foreign countries, from internal sources, including our trusted Apple and the big corporations who are picking up without our permission and selling our information to whoever they wish. So we are already under enormous privacy attacks, and it's in, you read the New York Times this morning, the Privacy Project, you read the newspaper every day, you see it all across the country. So I have enormous doubts that New York State could protect our data given the circumstances.
Much appreciated. Stephanie, I think we're ready. Thank you again for your comments. Folks, we're hearing from folks who provide services. We're hearing from the consumers. This is exactly what we were hoping for. Thank you very much. I want to let you know, Sarah's going to keep me honest. We will take a break. We'll take a 15-minute break at 2:30. Right now, we're doing well. I want to continue with the comments, but we'll definitely take a break here in a few minutes. So please, it's all yours.
Good afternoon.
I'll come back to you, Peter.
So with the progress and where we are today, landlines aren't necessarily, a standard in every home anymore. It's more so just mobile-based. So whether you're talking about an app and/or EVV from a mobile phone, the OMIG resolution codes that we currently utilize for EVV, are they going to be updated to the 21st century where there may not be mobile phones that utilize EVV or app? Landline phones that can utilize EVV, it'll be coming from a mobile phone. And then providers need to call, speak, confirm, reconfirm, and then this creates a call every day to the consumer and or patient, which then they get frustrated at us. We'll stop calling you every day. We do this every day. It's the same story every day. But we have to follow the OMIG resolution codes. Mm-hmm. So are those going to be updated with the new policies?
Again, a very valid question. I don't know that we have an answer for you at this point because of the fact that we have yet to select an EVV solution. Some of those are details that will have to be worked out.
Okay. The question is, because of this 21st Century Cures Act and EVV being implemented, what does that mean for verification organizations? Will they, because technically VO was around to prevent pre-claims and fraud as well, now that EVV will be in place, that will be proactively preventing fraud in advance. What does it mean for verification organizations once the EVV is implemented and executed throughout the state?
So again, the question is that we're going to write down is what is the impact on the BOs, essentially. Stephanie, do you have your mic? Oh, that's okay. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we can continue. Again, Lana, unless you have a comment, I'm going to move on because I don't have that answer yet. Okay.
I want to reiterate what that young lady had said before, that a lot of our aides have learning problems and or language problems. So whatever's decided has to be simple so that they can understand, because basically I do all the written work for them right now.
Very good. Important comments.
Hello. I just wanted to echo some of the points that were already made, but in this day and age, where so many groups are advocating for their rights and their pursuit of happiness and liberty, the rights of life, happiness, and pursuit of happiness. It's amazing that this particular group, people with disabilities, are always an afterthought. I personally feel that every election campaign, we're never mentioned. We work, we live in a community, we have social lives, but that's not recognized. And this is only another addition to the burdens that we have to bear. We're always fighting for our quality of life, our quality of care, and it's being threatened every year. And I feel this is a gross violation of privacy and civil rights. And I don't know what else to say. I think Kendra and DK and everyone else made excellent points, and I agree completely with them.
Thank you very much. Stephanie, all the way back to Peter, please. He had his arm up earlier.
Yeah, there's a really nice gentleman behind me who works for Sun Data, who suggested in a very friendly manner to me that we should talk after. So I would like to take this opportunity and give him a chance to tell in front of everybody what he wants to say, okay, and why he's here.
I'm sorry, I'm just here to listen and observe. We have some of our customers and friends here, and just generally from an informational standpoint, I'm just here to listen and learn. So I just mentioned, Peter, based on your comment before, if you're not getting any information that you want here, I'm happy to answer any of your questions anytime. But again, I know for the state, the purpose of this session is to gather information and to get your feedback. So I don't know that it's appropriate for me to offer any more than that. If the state wants me to speak on anything, I'm just one of several vendors. But if it's helpful to anybody here at the state level for me to contribute, by all means, I'm happy to do that too. But I'm really otherwise just here to learn on behalf of the community.
Very good. Much appreciated. Other folks that have a comment, if you're waiting to provide your input, I'm all for it.
I just wanted to speak on an issue that was discussed earlier about the intent of EDV and DOH's position not being here to take away the independence or the programs that we've built. And I want to be very clear in stating that, if you implement an EDV system that does not have multiple options for choice, flexibility, accessibility, that does not mimic the California model to give a very broad interpretation of the CARES Act and EDV requirements, or even more broad than what California is offering right now, you will unintentionally, I hope unintentionally, be taking away that independence and be eroding the consumer-directed models that have been built here in New York State and gone out across all states in this nation, to use the model that we have here, that disabled people created here, that we've built for ourselves here. And so I want to be very clear that while I understand the intent of these listening sessions, that if our feedback is not carefully considered and our direct involvement in the development and design of these systems does not happen, you will be eroding our independence and taking it away. You will be causing upset and burdens and disruption in literal activities of getting out of bed, going to the bathroom, eating meals, getting out of our home, going to work, and being tax-paying citizens here in this state. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra.
Questions, comments? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephanie. There is a comment over here.
So earlier I remarked about the importance of transparency. I would make one amendment to my remark earlier and then ask going forward that we do things slightly differently. I think that in the interest of transparency, I should disclose that I use consumer direction and I've been using it for 20-something years. I also work for concepts of independence as the director of policy, and I've been doing that for about 6 years. So I have a professional as well as personal interest in how these policies will be implemented. So my suggestion as a procedural thing is that when people speak and offer comments or questions, that they identify their relationship to the issue. So if you're a vendor of EVV services, or if you're a verification organization, or if you're a home care organization, whoever is speaking, identify their interest in the process.
So who else in the room is a vendor, EVV vendor, besides the nice guy from Sun Data?
Peter, I understand why you're asking the question. We've had a couple conversations so far. Is there, I'm going to do that with a show of hands if it's okay, because I think it's a valid question. Are there folks here who work for vendors? We've identified folks who work for the verification organizations. We've got some other, okay, so we do have a couple of other folks. Okay. So I count a few. Do you have a comment that you want to offer?
Thanks.
All right.
Those guys?
Oh, no, I'm asking you as well. Do you have a comment as well?
Oh, sure. We hear from this nice gentleman. No, I work at HHA Exchange, and I'm just here to listen.
Yeah, I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, Peter, to be honest. It's up to them to give me the sign to let me know they want to say something. Is there anyone else who wants to say anything? Because I'm actually really considering taking our break now, but I do have one comment here. So we'll take one more comment, and then we'll go on a 15-minute break.
My solution I have is to track the people who cheat the system and not use us for the benefits. Tell them.
Don't use people with disabilities as the guinea pigs for finding ways to track fraud and cheat.
Very good. One other comment, and then we'll take a break.
I was saying he also said track the people who are committing fraud, not everybody. Amen.
Agreed. Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to give ourselves a 15-minute break. Please come back by just a couple, well, how about 2:30? That should be enough time, I hope. Please come back at 2:30. Okay, I'm going to start off with a thank you to all of you that have contributed so far. I know we have some other comments. This room is ours for a little bit more than an hour. I have a couple of closing slides. What I've done in the other sessions is allowed this break to happen. Some folks have gone out, come back in. I'm trying to be a little bit patient because I want folks to have the whole 15-minute break. But once we get started again, I'm going to kind of gauge all of you, and if there is more input, I will take it for sure. But we do need to close at a certain point, and I do have a couple of closing slides that I'd like to share. So it's really all up to all of you to kind of let me know, and I can take that input, you know, as a lull, as a silence, whatever it is. I want to make sure that we don't push anybody out of this room without their opportunity to provide input. We've had some really good feedback so far. It's very much appreciated. I kind of have to stand behind this mic. I have to be very directional so far, but I don't have any more reading of slides. I don't have any more to offer. Once I see that you guys have had a chance to come away from the break and we think about our comments, if there's someone who would like to make another comment, please, now's the time. Anyone at all?
I'll start.
Okay, we have a comment over here, please, Stephanie.
Well, keeping with what TK had requested, I didn't introduce myself the first time. I'm Michael Wasser. I use home attendant services. I'm also the vice president of the board of directors of BCID and an attorney. My comment to start this second half of the session is that we've heard a lot of input from the actual true stakeholders here, meaning people with disabilities who use the services, caretakers, parents. We have heard nothing from the Sandata and other gentlemen who work for the companies that are on the precipice of making a nice sum of money on us. It would be nice for us to hear what their take on it is, to hear what they intend to do in terms of safeguarding our rights to be independent, to safeguarding our security, and to basically not turn this into purely monetizing people with disabilities. I'd be interested to hear what they have to say on that.
Well, I appreciate that as a concern, and it is a valid concern to hear from the vendors. At this point, I don't want to put folks on the spot. If you're a vendor and you have a comment, That's up to you to raise your hand and add to the conversation. If it's not possible, or if it's not appropriate here for lots of different reasons, that's okay too. But I do want to continue to collect input from folks that have a concern they want to voice in this room.
What has the state DOH met with any of the vendors?
We have a question. I can repeat the question, or I'd like you to as well, please.
Has the state or any representative thereof met with the vendors? What was the content of those meetings? What information was conveyed? I mean, this is
We have
something
not
that-
met with any vendors.
But the guy from Sun Data who left, he knew all of you. He went there, shook hands with you, means you good buddies.
I don't know anyone from Sandata, other than the gentleman who raised his
He
hand.
attended the Long Island session yesterday as well, so he did see many of us yesterday. That's the only contact we've had with him prior to today, was at yesterday's session.
So what Sarah was saying is that some of the folks from Sandata, and we know about that company, some of those folks have been in some of our sessions, rightfully so. Those sessions are open. And if there's a comment that we can use, if there's a concern that we want to record, that's really the focus of today's listening session.
Okay, well, I'm not with Sandata. Tony Caputo with Concepts of Independence. I guess my goal, or my mission, or my function at Concepts, or whether I've been at a state association meeting as president, whatever, is always giving everybody choice. Okay, so, and that's what the whole model's about. You know, you choose who you pick to hire, how to train them, how to schedule them, and the whole thing. So, and I'm also a former CPA and one of the first certified fraud examiners in the country several years ago. So I could see where government would want some accountability. So I think after hearing all of you, and I've certainly been familiar with the Cures Act for at least 2 years, and I've been to national functions discussing with Applied Self-Direction and National Association of Self-Directed Programs a year ago, a few months ago. So we've certainly had a lot of discussion. Our advisory committees talked about this. So I don't think the consumers, and I think the goal here, my goal, I guess, is to see how we can kind of bridge everyone's concerns. How could we, and I don't think there's any consideration by the consumers that they shouldn't have electronic means of communicating time and attendance. I mean, I could tell you, because we serve Clinton County, and our payroll's processed in New York City, and as well as others, we process from the Catskills and a lot of rural areas. It's difficult to get a paper timesheet from them. Even getting fax machines. We had to deliver fax machines a couple of years ago when there were some major snow problems up in some of the counties to, get us the information. So certainly, I think we can all agree that electronic means, and I'm not condoning one or the other, it could be very helpful in ensuring that people get paid timely, and so I think that's not where the concern is. But how we could all work together to, again, it's a federal law, but if we could at least at the end of the day today, or at the end of all these sessions, because I'm assuming what you heard yesterday was similar to what you heard in Albany a few days ago, and you're going to probably be hearing in Rochester or wherever, Buffalo and wherever else, and you're going to hear back again. I think that, I think it's good that the consumer's voice, because I think it's the only way that we all understand where everyone is coming from. So I think that should continue. But I think the goal that we could start to move ahead is to come up with some sort of solution, and whether it's this California model or some other model. So I think having that conversation. But I think it's also good, because this is a federal law and because the state still has to get some blessings from the federal government, whatever their ultimate decision, we can at least get the state to acknowledge that they would consider not just one way of doing this, and it sounds like the state is willing to say that, and the state is willing to speak to the federal government about an alternative method that the consumers here in this room and across the state could all live with, or several solutions to it. And then I think maybe some energy needs to be spent, and it sounds like there could be some, but I think a lot of energy, instead of getting it spent at these sessions, and he should continue, people should come, but I think a lot of energy needs to be spent also at the federal level to ensure that CMS, and I know that there's very little that they can determine. I know that when I went to the session a year ago and CMS was present, they said, this is a law, we can't interpret it. And we can't really give directives because it's a law, So, but the thing is, I'm certain that there's some way that the federal government, and I think energies need to be spent by all the consumers that are concerned here today, spend those energies somewhat with the federal government to ensure that there is at least some sort of, broadened interpretation, certainly over this issue with location. So I think we spend some energies there, and we get the state to say that, yeah, we will consider other alternatives and present them to the vets. I think the best is what we can do. We're going to live with this. I think it's going to be a requirement. I don't think, even though it came out under the Obama administration and Trump's here, I don't think it's an issue that Trump is going to say, okay, let's throw this out. No, I think everyone is accepting it. But I think if we could all work in the same direction instead against each other to get something accomplished, and we can get some acknowledgments from the state that they're willing to look at alternative models, which it sounds like they're willing to do, and we could get some energy at the federal level, that everyone write to their senators or assembly people or CMS directly. Certain Kendra and her group can share with us how we can reach out to the federal representatives to get our opinions heard. I think maybe we could work towards getting something that'll, improve everything and make everyone pleased, and vendors could make money, states and governments could see accountability, and workers could not leave their jobs, and it could all be, come together. Because certainly, as a former CPA and certified fraud examiner, having the consumer, sign off on something gives me much more comfort that document is valid over than just some phone call. Certainly, we've seen over time the use of the call-in system. We had a situation where a grandmother had passed away, and there was no call coming in after she passed, and we followed it up. Where's the call? The next day, where's the call? The family, who was the granddaughter and great-granddaughter, who actually were the PAs on it, realized, oh wow, Concepts doesn't know their grandma died. Let's start calling in tomorrow. After a couple of weeks, we got a notice from the plan that the case was being terminated because the plan knew the grandmother died. Now it had to be turned over to the Attorney General's office, Mofoku. But the thing is, there's got to be some way that we all come together and we could all listen to each other, and we could, devote the energies that we need to in a proper channel so that we could all accomplish this. I think that could happen. So I hope.
Thank you. Again, very valid comments and lots of mentions of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. There's a lot of good acronyms in there, and I appreciate it. Other comments? Again, this is about all of you. We have a comment in the front here, Stephanie. We'll come back to you in just a second. Go ahead, Kendra.
Kendra Scalia again. I think that what we're hearing here today is just a lot of frustration from the community because no decisions have been made, and we're 6 months out from full implementation. And I hear that the state is going to consider going in for a good faith effort waiver. That's not a guarantee. And so for those of us who this is going to impact every single day, we can't just sit back and say, okay, great, you're going to fill out that application and maybe we'll get another year extension. We need to make decisions and get something on the ground now. So without actually finding solutions and talking about those solutions and making decisions and talking about those decisions, we're just kind of going to go around in circles with all of the same concerns. And so I posed this question in the Albany session, and I'll pose it again. I think one of the biggest things that would help consumers here today and across New York State is if we can get a commitment from the Department of Health to ban the use of GPS, geofencing, and biometric data in all EVV systems for all New York State residents. Can you make that commitment?
So Kendra, you have asked that question, and I appreciate the frustration in wanting to move forward. We agree we need to move forward. The state will seek an extension with CMS. We've been doing a lot of good work to secure that extension. The guarantee that you're asking for, I think we need to respectfully complete our listening sessions across the state. We haven't done that yet. We have several more scheduled. We have a few webinars scheduled. We have a request for an evening webinar. And I think we need to continue to get all of the stakeholder input and provide folks as much opportunity to provide that input. And then I think, as I indicated before, we'll work to disseminate that input and move forward collectively and collaboratively with the solution. It is very clear, and you've stated it numerous times extremely eloquently, that those are things that you do not want in an EVV system.
It's not just me, it's the community. This is a nationwide request. We have a national bill
that is out there to ban the use of GPS, geofencing, and biometrics, because there are serious legal concerns and personal individual privacy concerns. So what we can do in New York State is we can jump ahead of a federal bill to do that. We can make this decision. In fact, you can make that decision. DOH, when I say you, can make that decision to not have GPS, geofencing, or biometric data collection in EDV.
Stephanie,
I don't disagree with you, but I do, again, want to continue to complete our listening sessions across the state, because everybody needs to have a choice to indicate their preference, their concerns, just like you have and all the other folks in the room here today. We have webinar forums coming up, a lot more engagement to go, and I would not want to short circuit or truncate that in any way. And so that is the path that we have.
And Lon, I really appreciate that. I want to add to it. At the end of this slide, I mentioned that I do have some closing slides. At the end of the presentation, by the end of our time here, there is a slide that has a full list of the sessions, including the ones we've just recently added. We have a comment right here in the front, Stephanie.
We overtake time projections every day after plan, but without the no guarantee that no more will listen to our become. With time protection, look, now we are here now.
Thank you. Again, a valid comment. We have a one right up here, Stephanie, please, and we'll come back to Peter.
Hi there, I'm actually going to read a comment from someone who was supposed to be here today, but they couldn't because of the weather, and his name is Claudio D'Arezzo, and he says, "This will be the worst thing ever introduced in the history of privacy and the invasion of it. I won't stand for it. This will kill the industry and consumer-directed services. The workers can get any other job for minimum wage and not be subjected to this extreme invasion of privacy. It's appalling to even think in the 21st century that the disabled have to be treated as such."
Thank you.
Again, thank you for that.
I also kind of want to make a comment for myself.
Please do, please do.
I'm Jessica, and this is just extremely stressful for me as a person with a disability. My entire life, I've fought and struggled and been under the microscope for every single move that I make, and I feel like a prisoner, and I'm not a prisoner. I am a human being just as anybody else. Nobody else has to do these things. So I don't want to be punished because I'm a person with a disability, and it's just not fair.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a comment over here, Stephanie, please.
My name is Fred Polsky. I represent a fiscal intermediary called Health Aid Inc. I've worked for one of the largest insurance plans in the state. I've also worked for a very large home care agency. So I've been on kind of few ends of the spectrum. I've helped enroll hundreds of people into the CDPEP program. So I kind of want to give my take on both sides of what the consumer sees and a little of what the agency sees. So on the consumer side, it is true what these folks are saying. It is much harder to find a home attendant or a personal assistant that is going to be willing and able to clock in via EDV. So it does definitely limit the pool of candidates. On the other hand, it also poses privacy risks in that the government essentially would know exactly when and where the personal assistant is clocking in and out. However, on the agency side, speaking from my, being involved with the fiscal intermediary, fraud is real. Medicaid dollars are being wasted on fraud. EVV definitely helps prevent the fraud. I can go into several detailed examples how this works, but in general, it does help, and more importantly, it helps the physical intermediary kind of step away from that fraud. And as long as the physical intermediary is following the EVV protocol, they limit their risk into how much they could be liable for in terms of fraud. So I wanted to end by saying that I think that this is not a case of one size hat fits all. Everybody has their own issues, especially in this type of community where everybody really has their own particular needs. So good luck.
Again, very much appreciated. We have a couple more comments. I wanted to, if we come, Stephanie, all the way to the center.
First of all, we have data that the fraud with home care and particularly self-directed services is minimum. And it's the good excuse that the good old folks from Sandata and the tech companies use to twist the arms of the lawmakers to make us prisoners, when it might be a wise decision to have a few of them walk around with a Manafort bracelet and see if they're clocking in to do their duties as lawmakers, because it certainly was a swift under-the-table move that got this legislation into federal law. And it is not, you cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater just because a few people commit fraud. That's why you have Medicaid fraud reporting and all of that. You don't have to condemn a whole community of people with disabilities across the state and the country to be clocked and watched and monitored at every moment of their lives because some individuals have possibly committed fraud. And secondly, the DeGette bill, which I believe from Kendra is being drafted, I'm going to get all our parents, all their family members, all their aunts and uncles and neighbors to call the 3 members from New York who are on the Commerce and Energy Committee to make sure that that legislation gets passed for us that will eliminate the tracking and the bio and the GPS. All of that will be as an assault on our privacy. We will get to our members. And if you saw the success that we had when the governor tried to ram the whole CDPAP issue down our throats with no notice and once again throwing the baby out with the bathwater, we parents mobilized, and we were the ones who organized the rally in front of the governor's office, and we were the ones that sent parents in the whole state, because we have parents across the state who have children, young children and adult children with disabilities. We got them to visit their legislators and tell them not to do CDPAP. Most legislators didn't have a clue what CDPAP was. They did after our families went to them and educated them in Long Island, Mid-Hudson Valley, Rochester, New York City. And we did that, and we can do it again when all the work that we've done, government doesn't care. They don't care that we're working. I work 18 hours a day to make sure the show is on the road for my kids. So my kids have quality of life. So these guys who've been fighting from ever since they could sign their name, they don't care. It's dollars and cents. And that's the governor of this state. But he did see, because we have people in the governor's office who told us that he was astonished at the pushback on CDPAP across the state, Republican and Democrats, because disability does not discriminate. It doesn't discriminate what party you belong to, it doesn't what religion you have, your economic status, nothing. Race, nothing. It's an equal distributor, equal disability for all. So the point is that I'm making, I do not see good faith with the Department of Health, because I have tried. I have written to the governor. I am an appointee of the governors, every governor of this state since 1991, for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. And I have seen in the last few years we have been abandoned by OPWDD, by the Department of Health. They don't answer as an appointee. They do not answer my letters. The governor doesn't answer my letters. And lawmakers do that at risk, because people with disabilities and their families and their aunts and uncles and neighbors and their therapists and everyone connected with them, they do vote. And so I have seen that the Department of Health is just now getting on board with the EVV when we already got a year's extension, because advocates, Kendra is well aware of this, across the country pushed to get an extra year. We got legislation for an extra year, and we will get legislation to destroy this, because this is not the Soviet Union. This is not China. This is the United States of America, and we deserve freedom like any other individual in this country, and you wouldn't get away with it with other populations.
Thank you, Mary. I would just like to note that I do care, but thank you.
And again, thank you. Very valid comments. Kendra, you had your hand up a little bit earlier. I wanted to make sure you had it, then I'll come back to Peter. And I think, let's come this way first. Kendra had her hand up first. Thank you.
The last couple commenters spoke about fraud, and I do have those numbers for you. Over the past 7 years in the consumer-directed program across the United States, the fraud rate in consumer-directed services is 0.02%. I'm not sure that that's something that's worth the amount of money that we're spending, $10 million this budget cycle alone. I hear it's going to be more than twice that next cycle for EVV. But further, I'd like to caution the state in using fraud in any of your documentation as a reason for EVV or for discussing certain criteria of EVV systems moving forward. There have been many Supreme Court decisions over the last 2 years that do not permit suspected criminals to be tracked in any manner. And so if you're going to use the fraud excuse and potentially say that we are criminals, I'd be very cautious of doing that, because this community is armed with information about our rights, and we will pursue that. Thank you.
Okay, and over just all the way to the end, please.
One quick comment, and then following up on the topic of I just came back from the bathroom on the first floor, and I'm pleased to report that it's equally inaccessible. In terms of fraud, to me, the question of fraud is just a moving target and really kind of an artificial concern. There's another way to capture fraud, and that is to do better authorizations on the front end of the process. I mean, I work in consumer direction with the founder of this entire program model. There are fiscal intermediaries that are running overnight operations that literally help people to qualify for managed long-term care services. I'm not completely convinced that all of those cases really have the same population of what concepts started with. So, I mean, I have spinal muscular atrophy. There has never been one documented case of a person with SMA ever making a miraculous recovery. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, lots of things. Once you break your neck, your neck breaks. Once you have cerebral palsy, it doesn't just turn around. I mean, I think that if the people that authorize care understood disabilities better, and we have an LTC that understood disability very well, called Independent Care Systems. Yet DOH has decided that they're not to be around any longer. So I think that you can address fraud in other ways than infringing on privacy and freedom and the important aspects of community-based services as represented by consumer direction.
Thank you, TK, and I do sincerely apologize about the miscommunication around the accessibility of the restrooms.
I think we had another comment here in the center. Go ahead.
Yes, so you said that you will keep having those hearings, those listening sessions and webinars. And so far you had quite a few, right? How do you collect all the data? How do you collect data, the comments, and how you process them? And what's the process of arriving at the decision which model of EVV, or if any, you will implement in the state?
So, bunch of questions there. So we are recording the sessions. We have numerous staff around the room today who are taking notes. We also have the board up here where we're recording your stake, or keeping track of your comments.
It's a paper time.
Yeah, paper time sheet. So we will assemble all those comments. I think we will complete our listening sessions, probably create some kind of documentation or report out of summary, an overview of the comments that we've heard. Again, all the sessions are being recorded. They'll be posted to the website so anyone can go and listen to any feedback from any of the sessions. And then we'll come back to stakeholders and make our next conversation around how do we collaboratively move forward, hearing all of the comments from all the listening sessions across the state.
And Lon, I would add, I actually would like to add, that's what I was thinking is, how about I walk?
Thank you. So there it is.
So 7/18 is when you're stopping all the sessions. When do you think you'll be able to compile all of the comments and feedback from all these groups? Because shortly after that comes January 1st.
Right. So again, we will be seeking an extension. We're moving as quickly as possible to collect and report the comments. I would imagine it would take us a few weeks, probably, I don't know, 3 weeks maybe.
And it's summer.
And it's what?
It's summer.
I know. Lots of work to do. The work doesn't really mind the season, unfortunately. But, so yeah, we will move to as quickly as possible. Collect and disseminate the comments and go from there on our stakeholder feedback. I mean, I think it's really important to continue to hear from stakeholders across the state and continue our listening sessions. We will reschedule the venue. We will not use this venue again for the July 9th session, so we'll either need to change that date if we can't find another more suitable venue, but we will not have another session here.
And I would add, we actually, if we can go back a couple of slides, and again, sometimes these closing slides really do remind folks of other comments, and we have time for that. But let's walk, there we go, let's stop here. I'm just going to walk through these final slides, because I think it's a perfect segue, and it reiterates what Lon is speaking to. So our next steps here, major milestones for implementing EVV, all right? Milestone 1 is planning. That's really where we are right now. Listening sessions. This is one of many. The EVV option recommendations. We're taking feedback not only in these sessions, but also on our EVV email address. Milestone 2 is to develop the strategy. This is being thought about. We've been thinking about this since the rule came out. Execute the strategy. And then milestone 3 is moving forward with the development and implementation, the training, which is required by the statute, and work with EVV vendors when necessary. All right?
At what point the decision is going to be made, and by whom? And is it open to the public too?
These are all questions that have been...
The process of decision making.
Right.
So I think that the recommendation and ask from this room is that we continue the collaborative process throughout the milestone planning. So completing the EVV sessions And then when we disseminate the data back and begin to, from the stakeholder comment, develop potential obligations or options, for example, EVV California, come back and hear from the stakeholders on that direction and pick a solution and move forward to implementation, which again will continue to be a stakeholder engaged process.
And Sarah, if you could go to the next slide, these are laid out on these final slides. And again, this particular slide deck is out there. It's going to be on the website. Folks can see it whenever you want to. But essentially, the steps to achieve the milestones, complete the statewide tour of listening sessions, and the final slide, as you've seen already, actually adds some. Okay. So steps to achieve the milestones: determine the strategy and execute, continue collaboration with stakeholders, provide training, ensure smooth and well-informed implementation, monitor and evaluate implementation. And again, we're back to the schedule of our next listening sessions. And it also lists the ones we've completed already. So Kendra, I can see you have another comment, and I have a comment in the front, so we'll go to Kendra first.
During the Albany listening sessions, a lot of the comments were based upon a desire for choice and flexibility, and specifically for a provider choice model selection. I'm not hearing a lot of that here today from DOH when they speak about moving forward. So I'm wondering if there is still on the table the option of moving to a provider choice model, or if a state model is something that you're committed to at this time.
So we've not made any decisions. I just really need to reiterate that, right? I keep hearing, have you made a decision? Can you commit to? Can you guarantee? That is in front of the stakeholder engagement and collaboration process. So again, we have not made any decisions. The point is to get information from you all to then disseminate information. We had a slide up here that showed the 5 different kind of approaches, swim lanes for solutions. One or more of those can be employed, right? There is numerous options, right, to implement. And on the one hand, I hear we appreciate and want the California model. On another hand, I hear we want flexibility. We want to, right? So I think somewhere along those various comments from folks, right, and you're all going to have your own opinion. I hear there is some collective approach that you indicated earlier, where you have a groundswell of support for some of the work that you're doing at the federal level, and your requirement, in your work with Congress to ensure that there isn't any biometrics, GPS, all of that. Take all of that into consideration and work with you all to get to a solution. It's a difficult choice, right? We can hear it in the sessions, and it's an excellent point that you're making, right? Albany's sort of thinking one way. This room's thinking another way. And I don't want to presuppose what the remaining rooms on the listening session schedule, or even in the webinar, will also presuppose as a solution. So I think we got to continue our collaborative work together, get the comments together, and then move forward with an option, approach, a solution. Could be many, right?
I believe that what I am speaking to is not contradictory of one another, that a provider choice model and a California model are not exclusive. That, and I would point you once again to best practice guidelines developed by Concepts of Independence, where they do merge a California model with a provider choice model. So again, those best practices are out there, and what we're asking for today are not contradictory of what you're hearing from Albany. It very much aligns with what we've been talking about all along in the community.
Understood. My point is, right, there's lots of different stakeholder comments and viewpoints, and we're just really trying to assess the landscape, right? Harmonize that to the extent that we can, and move forward together with you with a solution that minimizes, to the extent possible, a very tall and complicated order all of the issues and concerns that you have. That's the goal.
And we do have another comment right here in the front, Lana.
So you will go back to the side with the process.
To the process, can we go backwards in the slide deck?
No, back.
One more.
No,
The milestones.
There it is.
Yep.
In the milestones, what date we will hear by when your answers are so collected, and will we have time to repeal?
So if I can repeat, the question is really about what's the timeline for making these milestones occur?
And will you have time to repeal once it's been?
Thank you. And will the time allow for feedback, essentially?
So it definitely will allow for feedback. There's a lot of questions around timeline. I don't have a set date for you, but there are some key milestone dates that we can think about, right? So July is the time that we can begin to seek an extension from CMS for the 1/1/20 due date on the personal care side. In order for us to, we can waive penalties. CMS will consider waiving penalties for that 1 year. So I think that we'd all like to avoid penalties. And I think our goal would be to seek an extension and move forward so that we are on track for implementation no later than the end of next year, as a general rule. But again, that presupposes, that timeline where presupposes that it's hard to create a timeline when we haven't collectively isolated what the implementation strategy is going to be and what the solution is going to be. So I'm just trying to be very careful with you in trying to give you some milestones and key dates for consideration around implementation in an awkward position without full information and fact gathering, which really needs to come from you folks here today and throughout the rest of the sessions. But that is something I can offer you if that helps in terms of thinking about the timeframes for the milestones.
Very good. Thank you, Lana. We've been here together as a group for a little over 2 hours. We do have a little bit more time. If there's someone who has been waiting for a while to provide a comment, this would be a great time to let us know that you want to say something. There's been a lot of great feedback, and it's much appreciated. But I wanted to give folks another chance if there's something else that you want to make sure that we hear in this listening session. Anyone at all? We do have a comment midway through.
Hi, my name is Carolyn, and I know a lot of people here. I agree with everything that Kendra and TK and Mary and everybody said. I just, as a general comment, there's not a high degree of trust out here in the consumer community, and I'm here as a parent. I guess one sort of really technical thing that maybe hasn't been said. There are a number of us who are using, whose kids, my kid, are using services both through consumer-directed personal assistance and through a PWDD self-direction. ComHab, both of those services are going to be subject to the EBV requirement, and just from a logistical perspective, it's a logistical nightmare. We would have to be coordinating EBV systems for 2 different services, possibly from the exact same person on the exact same day. So speaking for that subgroup of families, and there are a bunch of us here, that will add to the nightmarish quality. And just another general thing, I feel like my daughter's 28. I've been in this world a long time. I feel like the last couple of years, we've just been under assault from the state of New York, and I don't know why. I mean, this is New York. We should be better than that. We have our governor who's, for some reason, still trying to wreck the CDPAP program. I don't know why. We have OPWDD, who's trying to force services into managed care that don't belong in managed care. We have the CDPAP jobs that used to be paid at a substantial premium to minimum wage have now turned into minimum wage jobs. These are highly skilled workers doing skilled nursing care. Why would they be paid minimum wage? I mean, so one thing after another is coming at us. And please, state of New York, don't let this be another one. Thank you.
Very good. Again, thank you for the comments. There's been a lot of good information that we're gathering. I think we're winding down a little bit, just from my read of the group.
So when I applied to law school, I put on the application that I wanted to be the voice for other people with disabilities. I don't think I have to do that today. So many people in this room made great comments. Really pleased that the turnout occurred. I mean, as much as I like holding DOH's feet to the fire, I'm grateful that they added additional listening sessions and webinars. I do think that the feedback is being taken down seriously, so I give you guys credit for that. The question of requesting an extension, can you speak a little bit about what are the criteria with which those decisions are granted, and depending on the results of CMS, what would it be if CMS says, no, we don't feel that you've met the criteria of granting a extension? It just seems like, yeah, sure, you can say, oh, we're going to ask for it, but if they say no, we're just going to end up paying the price for the decision coming out of Washington. And I don't trust the people in Washington much more than I trust the people in Albany.
Thank you, TK, for the recognition around the efforts to hear comments, and I really do appreciate all the comments in the room today. So the CMS has put out some guidance around the procedures and process for seeking an extension. We can actually post that to our website if folks are interested in seeing that, so we should do that. It generally centers around demonstrating a good faith effort in moving towards compliance. And we think that the work that we are doing with you all across the state will get us into a position where we should be well poised to receive an extension for CMS.
If you could put that stuff on, if you could put the criteria on the website, that might be useful to some people.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, Lana, thank you. So we'll put that criteria on the website, as you mentioned. I'm getting a sense that folks have sat long enough, and I don't want to end it until I know that folks are satisfied, but that's what I'm getting right now. I just wanted to reiterate one. Yep. Okay.
Just one question. I just wanted to know, when you get to the end of the implementation, will you have us to open that and see so it works enough for us?
Yeah, I think that, if I'm understanding your question right, I think there should be, right, in anything we do, a look back at how it's going. And I think implementation is just not, we've crossed the finish line and we're done, right? I think we need to collectively continue to work together. We will have collectively chosen a solution. We have worked together on the best way to implement it.
we will need to ask ourselves the question, is it going the way that we all anticipated? And be nimble as possible to make adjustments along the way. And I think you can depend upon that, and I think you depend upon transparency in our implementation process, the continued collaboration, and the post-implementation oversight and collective monitoring to identify trouble spots, issues, etc.
Agreed. And to add, we do have that documented on our previous slide. And we don't have all the details yet, but these are great questions. I'm going to wrap up here with this last slide, just again reminding folks that this collaboration process, the listening process continues. We do have our EVV email address, and we have our EVV website. There's a lot more information that will be posted out there as we complete these listening sessions. I really appreciate everyone's participation and patience with me and with all of us here today. I really have to thank all of you for your input. If there's anything else, please use that website. Please use the EVV email address, and we'll be happy to capture that information. Any other last comments, Lana?
Just another thank you for your participation today, your travel and your time here to share with us your thoughts. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, folks. We're finished here.